I have been on lots of property training courses, attended webinars, and paid for mentorships that say you should quit your job and live a life of passive financial freedom through property. No time, no experience, no money, no problem. Apparently, there are lots of ways of controlling property with none of your own money, using other people's money. You can do this passively so that you can live the life of your dreams, spend more time with your family and friends, take up that hobby you've always wanted to, travel the world, be financially free, and never have to answer to anyone ever again. Sounds too good to be true? Well, I signed up for this and more than once. But if I've learned anything, I wouldn't tell anyone to quit their job. So don't quit your job until you do this. In this video, I want to talk about why I quit my job, the solution, which wasn't the solution, how I got a house for nothing, my problem, back to work, my solution, the side hustle. On one training course I attended, I will never forget when the trainer said to the audience if they knew what the word job actually stands for. I'll come back to this at the end of this video. You won't want to miss this. Please do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button. It helps me more than you think. I initially quit my job to go into property full time. At the time, I was working at Standard Bank, which is a South African investment bank. I was working in the corporate development team, working on a transfer pricing project. I had been investing in property part-time since 2010, and I decided I wanted to go into property full time because at the time, I thought if I dedicated all of my time to it, then I would be able to grow my property portfolio quicker and faster. I was building up a buy-to-let property portfolio because I wanted to benefit from the monthly cash flow and long-term capital appreciation. Monday to Friday, I was not seeing my daughter as I used to leave for work around 6 a.m. and I wouldn't be back until 8 p.m. The solution, which wasn't the solution. I spent some time looking at the ways in which I could boost the cash flow, and I decided I was going to invest in HMOs, houses of multiple occupation. I was told that the cash flow was more than a single let and you could possibly earn £1,000 per month per property. So I spent some time looking at HMOs in Stevenage, Hatfield and Bedford. I was told that I could get a commercial valuation based on the rental income, which would mean I could pull all of my money out and go again. I actually agreed to buy a 10-bed HMO in Bedford, but when I looked at getting a commercial valuation, I soon realised this was not going to be the case. The 10-bed HMO didn't have en-suites in every room, and my broker said to me, if the house looked like the house next door, then it would get valued like the house next door, based on its bricks and mortar valuation. I also spoke to Cambridge and counties, and they even said to me that they would be looking for me to leave some hurt money in the project. I soon realised I would be leaving in at least £100,000, so decided not to pursue this strategy. Even houses in Stevenage, if I converted a 3-bedroom house into a 5-bed HMO, I would still be leaving in roughly £100,000 per project. The problem with HMOs, especially in the south, is that because the capital values are so high, it can prove difficult to recycle a lot of your money back out. How I got a house for nothing, living the dream. At the same time, I was also looking for single lets I could add to my portfolio, and I did manage to buy a property in Bedford. I purchased a 2-bedroom house, which I converted into a 3-bedroom house, which on the refinance, I was able to pull out all of my money. This 3-bedroom house that was worth £160,000 literally cost me nothing. I purchased this 2-bedroom house in Bedford for £97,500. My plan was to relocate the bathroom downstairs into the utility area at the back of the property in order to create an additional bedroom upstairs, therefore creating a 3-bedroom house. I knew a 3-bedroom house would be worth more than a 2-bedroom house, but how much more? It was very tight and dated. It was probate. The property had no central heating. The kitchen had a kitchen sink and 1 unit opposite. So my first thought was that this property is not mortgageable. In order for a property to be mortgageable, then it had to be lettable in its current condition. This property was not lettable in its current condition. I made a cash offer, which was subsequently accepted. I spoke with my broker, who after looking at the photos said we could try a buy-to-let mortgage with a free valuation, and so we did, and the lender came back and said yes, we are happy to lend. On screen you can see an example of the layout of a similar property. As you can see, the bathroom was actually a good size. It had a full bathroom suite, a water tank and also storage. Once all this was removed, the bedroom was very similar to the size of the 2nd bedroom. One of the issues with the existing bathroom layout and design was that because the bathroom bathroom had been installed under the sloping roof, you couldn't actually stand in the bath to shower. The utility room off the kitchen was a good size and had enough space for a bathtub, toilet and sink. The after floor plans is an example of a property I'd seen that had 3 bedrooms upstairs and the bathroom downstairs. In this area, it wasn't uncommon to have the bathroom downstairs, so I felt by adding a bedroom, I would be adding a significant amount of value to this property over and above just doing a straightforward refurbishment in its existing configuration. I found this house on Rightmove. The house looked tired and dated. I also looked at the floor plan to see how I could maximize the space and realized that I could reconfigure the layout to end up with a 3-bedroom house. How did I finance this property? I purchased this house on a buy-to-let mortgage with no early redemption penalty, completed the works to the property to create the uplift, and then after 6 months remortgaged onto another buy-to-let mortgage. I now realize that this wasn't the best way to fund the purchase and I should have been using bridging finance and then refinancing onto a buy-to-let mortgage. But at the time, my broker said there was no issue in buying the property on a buy-to-let mortgage, but really this wasn't the correct way to purchase the property. I refinanced the property onto another buy-to-let mortgage, having held the property for 6 months. So how did I end up with a property worth £160,000 for nothing? Let's go through the numbers. The purchase price was £97,500. There was no stamp duty to pay at this level. The legal fees were £1,500 and the refurbishment costs were £19,750. Total costs on this project were £118,750. The valuation came back at £160,000 and the buy-to-let lender advanced me £120,000. The rent per calendar month is £875. The rent per annum is £10,500 with a gross yield of 11%. So to summarize, there was no money left in. The return on investment was infinite. There is a misconception that all property investors only buy properties in which they can pull out all of the money they've invested in the property once they've completed the work and refinance the property. This simply is not the case. What property investors are looking for is the cash flow and long-term capital appreciation. I, in addition, look for property projects with good returns on investment. I am looking for projects that have cash flow, capital appreciation, but also the return on any money or funds left in on the project upon the refinance is earning a very healthy return. The problem I had with this strategy was that yes, this added to my portfolio in terms of the cash flow and capital appreciation, but it just took so long. I struggled to find other properties where I could pull out all of my money. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. A few months into me living the dream, I got a call from Standard Bank asking if I could come back for a short period of time. If I'm honest, I was glad to be back in a routine and glad to have a salary coming in. If I quit my job, I no longer had a salary coming in, so getting a buy-to-let mortgage would be more challenging. This is one of the big issues when you are trying to build a property portfolio. There are some lenders out there that will consider the property based upon its rental income, but to get access to the majority of lenders with the best rates and loan to value, lenders generally want you to have a salary of at least £26,000. They don't like you to be reliant on your own property portfolio as your only source of income. I felt like it was a catch-22 situation. I wanted to quit my job to build a property portfolio, but I needed to show a salary of at least £26,000, which wasn't coming from my existing property portfolio. So I ended up back at work and spent a year or so there until I had figured out the solution to this problem. My solution: the side hustle. Serviced accommodation. I decided I need to have another business which I could pay myself a salary from, which would allow me to carry on building my property portfolio. I decided to start a rent-to-rent service accommodation business. The business would allow me to take on apartments which I rented from letting agents. I could then let them out on a short-term basis, and I realized that per apartment I could make around £1,000 per month per apartment. I decided that I didn't want to deal with short-term bookings and wanted longer-term corporate bookings. When I was working at Standard Bank, we used to have a number of apartments that we would rent on a short-term basis for people coming over from South Africa for projects, also commons and or training. Staying in a serviced apartment meant that Standard Bank staff didn't have to spend a long period of time in a small hotel room, and also they had the ability to cook for themselves if they wanted. I started the business by contacting a lot of big employers in Stevenage and seeing whether or not they had staff that needed an apartment over and above above a hotel room. The companies I contacted overwhelmingly said yes. They had people coming over from all over the world that were initially staying in hotels, and then they were left to try and find their own accommodation. These employees were either on a project, a secondment, or a placement year, and so didn't like the idea of staying in a small hotel for a long period of time. I soon built up a list of corporates in the area and used this information to approach letting agents. I would show them the emails from these corporates looking for medium to long-term accommodation. I pitched the letting agents that I needed a number of apartments for these corporate employers and asked if they could help. Because I showed them the emails I had, they had no reason to doubt me, and straight away I managed to secure a studio apartment paying a deposit, 1 month's rent in advance, and then furnishing the apartment, which cost me about £1,500. The corporates were paying me £90 a night. That's £2,700 a month. The cost of running this apartment on a monthly basis was rent £725 including water, the council tax was £115, the Sky TV was £30, electric £100, TV license £13, and cleaning every 2 weeks was £80. Total costs were £1,063 per month. The profit on this one studio apartment was £1,637. The letting agent started calling me saying he had another studio, which I said okay, then a 1 bed, and then called me to say that he had a number of 2 beds coming on. I was more nervous when it came to taking on the 2-bedroom apartments because the rent was £1,200 per calendar month, but I decided I would try to see how they would perform before taking any more on. Quite quickly, I was managing a number of these apartments. I didn't have any intention on taking on so many apartments in a short period of time, but the letting agent had taken on a new development in the town centre that had been converted from offices to apartments, and he had lots of apartments available for rent coming up. Going forward, I wanted to reduce my risk and exposure, so started to negotiate on things like the deposit and rent. I started to use deposit insurance instead of paying a deposit, and I also started to look for fully furnished apartments, so again my initial outlay was reduced even further. I also started to negotiate on the rent, especially where I was taking on a number of these apartments, and especially where the apartments were owned by say more than one international landlord, and who was keen to have one company manage and be responsible for these. I genuinely thought it would be difficult to get these apartments on a rent-to-rent basis, but I soon realised my service accommodation model was different to most. Most agents had been approached by people looking to take on and list them on Airbnb and Booking.com, but I was different, and I pitched that I was doing more professional corporate lets, which meant less risk for them. I remember when I started taking on units in Welwyn Garden City that the agent was initially asking for 6 months rent in advance. I said there was no chance, and I said we would pay 1 month's rent in advance, but we were looking to take on a number of these units, and therefore we were not in a position to pay such a large deposit up front. The agent, namely the owner of the apartment, was nervous, but as soon as we showed them the type of bookings we were receiving in our other apartments, their mind was put at rest. In the end, I took on 9 apartments in a block that were all let to IT staff. The IT contractors were not allowed to share apartments, and we had to have one person staying in each of our 2-bedroom apartments, paying £110 a night. That was £3,300 a month, with the rent on these apartments being £1,100, with a clean every fortnight. The total costs per month was around £1,600, resulting in a monthly profit of £1,700 per apartment. The advice I would give anyone looking to build a property portfolio is not to quit your job straight away, but to try and think about the transition. What I've realized is that there is actually no reason you can't do this part-time. I still only do property part-time. The new trendy word that's used a lot at the moment is side hustle, and this is exactly what I recommend to people who are looking to get into property initially. For example, finding property deals online, finding a broker online, finding a solicitor online, finding an estate agent online, finding a builder and tradespeople, you guessed it, online. All these factors together will mean that I'm able to leverage a lot of people's skill sets and drastically reduce my time. For example, I found a property on Rightmove that I liked. Actually, it was on the same road to the first house I'd ever purchased. I viewed the property once, I agreed to buy the property and so engaged my solicitor. I let my broker know who organised the buy-to-let mortgage. I reviewed the valuation report and my solicitor's report to see if there were any issues. I contacted the agent I had met and asked him if there was anyone that could help with the refurbishment. He did. I asked the same agent if he could help me find a tenant, and he did. From then on, I tried to outsource as many tasks as possible to try and reduce my time involvement, but also I outsource to people who are actually knowledgeable and experienced. I save so much of my own time that I'm able to do this part-time. Literally everything can be done on the phone or online. The only time I need to leave the house is for a viewing. So if you would like to build a property portfolio part-time, I would recommend the following. Start part-time alongside your job. Define your investment objectives. Pick which strategy you would like to follow. Determine where this strategy will work. Try and execute this strategy and monitor your progress. This is exactly what I did when I started looking at supercharging the growth of my own property portfolio. I did this part-time whilst running my service accommodation business. The benefits of having a separate business is that I can draw a salary from the service accommodation business, and also I can use any money that business generates and lend it to my property buying business for a short period of time and repay it upon any refinance. So as my service accommodation business grows, so does the ability for me to invest in more of my property portfolio. The side hustle doesn't have to be property. Anything that you are interested in that you feel you would like to spend more time doing, which you might be able to monetize. The benefits of starting like this is that it's less pressure. When I first left my job with nothing in place, I did feel under pressure to get something in place quickly. I was very conscious that I wasn't earning anything, and also my expenses hadn't changed and remained the same. I was also at the same time very worried about spending too much money on anything I decided to pursue. Looking back, I'm glad I decided not to buy a HMO that I agreed to buy in Bedford, because I would have left in £100,000 with only £1,000 per month to show for it in terms of the return. As an investment, it wasn't too bad, 12%. So before I left my job for the second time, I decided that I had to have the following in place to help relieve any pressure on me personally and financially. A business that didn't require a significant amount of initial capital. A business that I was able to scale. Rent-to-rent service accommodation seemed to tick all those boxes. So don't quit your job, find a side hustle, and then make the transition once your side hustle builds up momentum. Back to what I said at the start of this video, I will never forget the time I was actually told that job actually stands for just over broke. Agree or disagree? Comment down below.